Good Wednesday evening, listeners, and welcome to Conversations of a Sister here on our YouTube channel. Today is Wednesday, September 28th, 2022, and we welcome you to our live edition here on Conversations of a Sister. What's up? How has everyone been after such a long summer? I hope you all had great summers. I thank you for tuning in tonight, whether you are online with me live or whether you will catch the recap of me being live here on YouTube. I swear it looks like my lips are moving slower than I'm talking. So I don't know if that's my connection. I don't know what's happening here, but nevertheless, we're going to roll with it. I thank you for tuning in either way. There is so much that has been happening in the news. Of course, we know that COVID is still alive and well, regardless of the fact that President Biden is trying to say that it's over. People are like, how can you say that it's over when it's still running rampant? It's just that the media has toned down with their over exaggeration of it. Because we do know that at one point, all we heard was COVID, 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 people dying of COVID. And if you notice now, the media has kind of died down with it, but it's still alive and well. It is just not as hyped as it has been in the past. But I hope that you are all taking care of yourselves and taking precautions as you would do with anything else because it is definitely not over and it has changed the way a lot of us live and the way a lot of us do business. You know, we have a lot of people who are working remotely and some who are not, but COVID is still here. And aside from some of the other things that's going on in the news, you know, we have this Russia invasion of Ukraine. You know, in the beginning, I just thought that was crazy that another country was going to just go and try and take over another country. And I commend Ukraine tremendously for fighting back. That's just like, you know, saying you're going to go fight somebody or pick a fight with somebody that you actually cannot beat. And I commend the president and the country of Ukraine for not just lying down and allowing Russia to run all over them. What I kind of do have an issue with is the fact that the United States keep coming up with all of this money to give them for this war. I mean, don't get me wrong. I understand the President Zelensky, he keeps saying that he needs help, he needs help. But I mean, the United States is like sending him billions and trillions of dollars when you have kids that are hungry and starving in Somalia. So they're begging for money for that to feed those starving children in Somalia, but yet they spend millions of dollars on assisting a war. So for me, it's like, make it make sense because it doesn't. I my heart goes out to Ukraine. Don't get me wrong, I get it. I understand you've been invaded by a country that just decided to invade you and you need the US's help. But I mean, the United States is helping them like a second sister. It's like every 5 days, he's like, I need more help. I need more help. I need more help. But in the meantime, we have young babies dying and starving in Somalia who also need help. And they're actually begging for money for that, to raise money for that. And I don't understand it because if we have money for one thing, we should have money for the second. I mean, really, what is the priority here? You know, I thought about that. And then we also had Queen Elizabeth, who died on September 8th. Queen Elizabeth. And, you know, Twitterland blew up. Twitterland, I think it was like social media, Facebook. They were like, people were celebrating the fact that she died. People were like, oh my God, I am so glad that she died. May her soul rest in eternal hell, or, whatever the hatred that was coming across for her. I was like, okay, wow. So, just one professor and several professors and several comedians who I've heard spoke out against it. They were like, you can't celebrate the death of a colonizer. Or we have those celebrating the death of a colonizer. They were like, she was a colonizer. She oppressed the people, and they still do to this day. I don't know if some of you remember, but I think it was last year or the year before that when William and Kate went to Jamaica and they actually booed them. uh, Prince William was really surprised, like, wow, I'm being booed, by Jamaica, and they were like, you, your ancestors, they basically colonized, this country, and you stole from Africa, you stole from India, you guys stole all these jewels, and he was booed, and him and Kate, his wife Kate was like a taken back. And I think the same thing happened when they visited Harlem. And when I read these things and I read how this stuff is coming out now, I say to myself, this is a different generation. These are ancestors, our ancestors that have gone before, I guess, were quiet about these things, or they didn't have the power that a lot of us have that is prevalent today. Now you have social media. Social media has given gain for a lot of access. It has given certain people big platforms. So people are speaking out against such atrocities. And what they were saying was, it's like, hail to the death of the queen. May she rot in hell. And they were saying all of these things about her simply because she colonized and oppressed the people. And that all of the crown jewels that are kept in the tower and guarded in London are stolen. Those are all stolen jewels, stolen from India and stolen from Africa. And you know what? I said it when she died and they had the guarding of her coffin. I was like, the guarding of that coffin is not so much about her, it's about those jewels that are estimated at $400 billion or more that they are actually guarding on top of that coffin. That's what that was about. That was about those jewels. And you have these countries, South Africa, India, they're all reaching out to Prince Charles. West Africa, they're calling for him, the new head of the monarchy, to return the stolen jewels. They're like, we want our jewels back, because those jewels were stolen, I think, in 1907. I think it was 1907 that they were stolen. The jewels were stolen. I know that the news of the Queen's death sent Twitter ablaze. And you had African archives tweeting, Queen Elizabeth owns the largest clear-cut diamonds in the world that are estimated at 400 billion, and they should be returned. India is asking that their diamond be returned. So all of those jewels that are in that crown, that scepter that she carries that has that little diamond, I think it's a heart in the middle of it, those are all expensive diamonds out of Africa, South Africa, India, that was stolen during colonialism. And they were saying that even if, she was not directly responsible, her ancestors were. Although they say that she was in Africa in 1963 when the mines were being, I guess, looked at or sifted for diamonds, and that all of the jewels that are in the UK are stolen. One comedian said that the entire, I think it was West Abbey or whatever the castle is, that can be used as a crime scene alone because all the jewels that they have are stolen. It's not a myth. It is what it is. So now that you have Prince Charles, who is now the head of the monarch, they're calling for him to return the jewels. And people are waiting to see how he's going to rule. They're waiting to see how he's going to move forward. My guess is he's not returning, he's not returning those jewels. They're not going to give up the luxury of what they have. I don't think that's going to happen. That's just like reparations that African Americans keep talking about. I think that the only state that has done it is Maryland. I don't think that other states are doing it. It's like people are turning a blind ear when they hear that because they're seeing it as, I don't know, a privilege. It's like now that a lot of things that happened in history is now being discussed. And this new generation, yeah, they're calling it out. They're calling it out. The children of slaves are calling it out. They're saying, we want what belonged to us. Just like Black Wall Street was destroyed. It's like Black people had their own. And, now this generation, they're calling it out. They're realizing what we owned, what we had, and what was destroyed or stolen. So they're like, we're here to get it back. We're here to claim it back. So I said all that to say that I was shocked. I was like, wow, people are actually bold enough to say, we want our jewels back from the Queen. Now that she's dead, we want our jewels back. They weren't afraid to mention this to Harry, to Prince William and Kate. They're like, we want them. And then you have Prince Harry, and Meghan Markle, who stay in the news about how they've been outcasted. Nobody cares, really. And they're thinking that he's going to tell all of the secrets of the monarchy. So, like any other family, they have their drama. I mean, really. But that was the biggest thing happening in the news. And I was like, oh my God, if the Queen is such a colonizer, and she came from a history and ancestry of colonizers, why is she so widely celebrated? I watched that queue of people that went in to view her, and they were of every nationality. Everybody went and had reverence for her. And I think it was because of the way that she carried herself. But, people on blogs, like a lot of blog readers, a lot of blog commenters were saying that she was straight up racist. Straight up racist. It was like Queen Anne, she looked like a racist. You could look at her and tell she's racist. I don't know. Maybe some people just have I know you're racist radar. They just get that vibe, I don't know. But these are just some of the things that was being said. Then we heard about Bill Farr. Wow. The former NFL player who stole millions of dollars from poor Black children, poor Black families in Mississippi. And, when I read about that, and I read about it, and I read about how he pressured this person, I guess, who was in charge of these funds to make it happen for him. This person was making it happen for him based upon who he was. And I think that he did it all in the guise of his athletic center or athletic field. But I think it's a shame that because of his name and because of his reputation and maybe even his privilege and connection, that he was able to steal millions from poor people in Mississippi. Oh my God. I just realized that I've been talking for 15, 20 minutes and my mic was muted. I tell you, you could tell this is my first night back on the air in over a year. I went on and on and on about the Queen of Ukraine, and you might not have heard it. But I started talking about Bill Farr and how he stole millions of dollars from poor people in Mississippi, and how the person who was in charge of these funds gave him access to them. I don't know if it was because of his name, because of his title, because of privilege, or because of who he is. But that story and that information is starting to gain traction online. And I think that, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if he's going to be held accountable. I don't know if he's going to be protected. My guess is that he is, because of maybe who he is. He's going to be protected. But it's just unbelievable that he's been able to get away with it. That's the part that it just blows my mind. It's like, Ralph, you stole from underprivileged children and you used it to your benefit. And I'm waiting to see if that's something that he's going to get away with. Then you have that other NFL coach. I think it was an NFL coach who was caught making comments about African Americans by making derogatory statements. It's like people now are like using these social platforms to call out this type of behavior. People are using this to their benefit. But at the same time, we still see certain privileges that are available to people who are of a different race. And I think that's amazing. I really do. I think it's amazing. I think it's amazing that you could steal from African American children and actually get away with it by putting pressure on whoever's in charge of the funding in order to get this particular money. And it just blows my mind that this type of thing can even happen. It's like, seriously? And it's like, who leaked it? How did it even get out? How do people even know? But they do. They know. And now it's out there. And now it's like every time I turn on the internet, every time I click on a link, there's a story about it. So it's out there. So my question is, what's next? What is actually going to happen to him? Nothing? Will he have to pay the money back? Because after all, these children were underprivileged. That was welfare, basically, that he took. Did he think that they didn't need it? Or did he not even care because it was going to benefit him? I think it's amazing. And then the real smokescreen behind that story was the Boston Celtics coach, one who's engaged to actress Nia Long, who had been having an affair with one or two of his staffers. Now, it's a trip because he was investigated. He was suspended for the rest of the season, and they are looking at suspending him. But what's even funny is when I was on my blog the other night, reading and looking at a lot of the blog comments, everyone wants to know who the woman is that he had an affair with. We know that she's Caucasian. We know that her husband was a high executive in the organization. And we also know that at this point, he's being reamed out in the media while she's being protected. So do you see the double standard here? Because I do. But at the same time, I also see the setup. Just because you have beauties in your barn, it does not mean that it's a free-for-all. And not only that, I mean, he and Nia Long were engaged for a long time. And I think that this was an issue that she maybe knew he had, which is why there was a long engagement. But you had everyone on social media coming to her defense because she's beautiful. But what beautiful woman hasn't been cheated on? People named Halle Berry. This one friend of mine on Facebook, she had a whole list of people who've been cheated on. She was like, your mother, my mother, your sister, my sister, your aunt, your friend. It's like almost everyone we know someone who's been cheated on. So they see it as, this is nothing new. It isn't nothing new. And it is true. Lots of women have been cheated on. But I think that lots of circumstances are different as well. I think when you are in a certain position in life, you have to be very careful as to how you move. You have to be very careful as to how you interact because the standards are held different for African Americans, be it a man or a woman. The standards are different. We are supposed to be held to different standards. And it's just certain things we don't do or we should not do because of these standards. And when we do, we see the punishment harshly. And that's because of the rules that apply. The same rules do not apply. The rules are different when you are of a different hue. The rules are different. And I think that because of that, he should have known better. I think that you have to be on a certain level to just know better. I had men popping on my Facebook page and they were saying, oh, a man is a man, men cheat. This is what happens, yada, yada, yada. And that was not my point. My point is that he didn't see the setup. You have to see the setup because some things are put in place to see what you are going to do or to see how you are going to handle it. Because some people could be thinking, oh, he's not going to make it because he's going to be set up to fail. We're going to put these different situations or different scenarios in place to see how it's handled because we know that he's going to fail because that's what they look for. They look for our failure. And they do that based upon the flesh. They're hoping that the flesh is weak. And if the flesh is weak, then they've got you. That's what I mean by a lot of our men, a lot of our women, even, they can't see the setup. You have to see the setup, especially when you've been put in certain positions, because the rules are different when it comes to us. The rules are very different. And that's in every sector, in every aspect of our lives and in this society. And that's what I mean when I say you have to be able to see the setup. Now, look, he was suspended. He may possibly lose his job with the Celtics as head coach. But was she suspended? Will she lose her job? She's citing harassment. Is that her protection? Because for women, that is easy to do. You can turn around and be like, well, I was harassed. I tried to end it, but, he kept coming for me. He kept coming at me. And, you're investigated. I remember one time I broke up with someone. I broke up with this guy. And he knew where I worked. So he contacted my boss. And he told my boss all of these very personal things about he and I. I think some of it was not true. And my boss knew it wasn't true based upon my character and based upon how it was written and what he said. And he told my boss that I had been doing all of these things from inside of the office. And I guess his ultimate goal, was to get me fired or to get me suspended. And what happened was my company, they did an investigation. They investigated. Now, mind you, I had no knowledge of it. I didn't know. I didn't know what took place. I didn't know, that he even contacted the company. And so one day my boss called me in and he was like, I was contacted by a Mr. He said my ex-boyfriend's name. He was like, and he said he shared some very personal and detailed information in an email to us about the two of you. He said he even told me, or even told us, that you were harassing him from the workplace. My boss was like, and you having worked here, I think I had been there like 6 years. He was like, we know your character, we know you. And the reason why we never said anything to you is because we did an investigation. They were like, and the investigation, came back to be false. We knew that all the information provided was false, that you were being lied on. They were like, so therefore, we just labeled him a jilted lover. So, imagine my surprise when they told me. I was really surprised because I was like, darn, I dumped him a while ago. And damn, who could be that vindictive? But you'd be surprised at who can be vindictive or how vindictive people become when a relationship ends. But I say all of that to say this. My character spoke for me. And it's funny because as many times as I communicated with this particular individual, I always did it outside of my office. I always did it outside of my workplace. I never did it there. Just as I would never date someone in a workplace. I just wouldn't do it because the saying goes, you don't shit where you eat. My father always told me that. So that's something I would never do. So I say that to say that when we are put in certain positions in life, our integrity and our character is going to speak at how it's handled. And it has absolutely nothing to do with being a patty perfect. It has everything to do with self control. When you can master self control, regardless to the temptation, you've mastered, you've mastered the most important thing within your character because that's what it boils down to. It boils down to your integrity and it boils down to your character. Because what comes out in the public should be something that you're not ashamed to share, even in private. So, therefore, it takes a great deal of restraint in carrying yourself in certain situations. So, let's keep that in mind. I thank you for tuning in tonight as we're back with our conversations. I can't tell you that they won't last longer because we probably will go past 30 minutes when we do have a guest on the show. But I thank you for tuning in tonight as we came back live. I'm sorry that my mic was off for a whole 15 minutes before I even realized it. I didn't even have it on. So that tells you that I'm a little rusty in my conversations and being back. I guess my head was all over the place. But this year of 2022, we are in celebration of 10 years. And I hope that it can be a year of great celebration. It's good to be back. It's good to continue the conversation because with so much happening, there's much to be talked about. So remember, integrity is everything and how we carry ourselves because that is what's going to dictate your reputation, regardless to what's being said. Your integrity and your reputation will always precede you. On that note, have a great night and thank you for tuning in to tonight's conversation. We'll see you next week, same time, when my guest will be Shanice Hill. She's a gospel singer. We'll see you then. Have a great week.